Hey, what's up? Welcome to it. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to get a very stylized cinematic look inside Davinci Resolve. First of all, before you start any type of grading, make sure you choose a frame from your video that you like or that you love, because there's no real point in grading something that you don't particularly like, because it's going to translate into your color grade. This is my hero shot because we've got a beautiful model sitting in the car. There's nice separation there. The lighting's great and she's looking straight into the barrel of the lens. So now that we have our hero shot, I'm going to delete all the nodes I used to create this, and hopefully I can get us back here. I'm going to create my first node by holding down Alt or Option if you're on a Mac and hitting S. In this node, I'm going to get our footage to output into Rec 709. There are a couple of ways to do this. For instance, you could use the color space transform tool inside of Davinci, or by using a LUT, like a log to Rec 709 conversion LUT. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using a LUT that I've already created. So I right click this node, scroll down to LUT, then I find my LUT that's called slog3 to Rec 709, click it, and there you go. We now have a Rec 709 conversion. This is one of the LUTs I will be giving away to my fellow Sony users. Now I'm going to drag this conversion Rec 709 node to the end of the node tree, and I'm going to create another node prior to this node by right clicking, scrolling down to add node, and then add serial before. Now you may be asking yourself, why am I creating a node prior to the Rec 709 conversion LUT? And this is essentially because the Rec 709 LUT takes all of the latitude from the log signal and clamps it down to be Rec 709, which is what we want because our output or our delivery is in Rec 709. But the thing is, we want to color grade with all of that latitude that the log provides. So we just grade prior to converting our color grade into Rec 709. I hope that makes sense. What I'm going to do now in this new node is I'm going to right click on it and label it EXP, because I'm going to fix the exposure that I can not only see in the monitor, but I can also see down in the right hand corner of Davinci Resolve under my scopes in the waveform. The waveform is a direct translation of what is in our monitor, and I can see in the information shown here that the frame is underexposed. So I'm going to come into the color wheels tab. I'm going to lift the gain or the highlights, and I'm going to lift the gain or the highlights by dragging the toggle wheel to the right until I see the highlights on the waveform are just about to touch the top indicator line. I don't want the highlights to go beyond this point, and the reason why I don't want them to go beyond the top indicator line is because if they do go above that, it means your highlights are clipping. Essentially, they've lost detail. We don't want to lose any information, so just don't go beyond that point. Next, I'm going to come into our gamma or midtones, and I'm going to lift those very slightly because I can still see on the waveforms it's still lying a little bit low for my liking. Next, just to add a bit of contrast to the image, I'm going to come into my lift or my shadows, and I'm going to drag the toggle wheel to the left, all whilst watching the waveform. And as soon as I see those shadows touching the bottom indicator line, I'm going to stop. There we go. Now here's before and after our exposure changes. Now it's really looking good just after with a quick exposure change, but I can see a glaring problem with this. For me, this image is just so green. It's got a green cast over it, and I know why that is. It's because on the day of filming this, I was using a variable ND filter. I'm not going to mention any names here, but it is notorious for having a green cast over the entire filter. So we got to fix that, and we're going to do that in the very next node by holding down Alt or Option on a Mac and hitting S. Once we've done that, we've got a new node. Now that we have our new node, I'm going to right click on the node, and I'm going to go to node label, and I'm going to label it WB for white balance. Now I'm going to show you an easy way to get the white balance in the right ballpark with a built-in tool that Davinci Resolve offers you. So I'm going to come back down into our color wheels tab, and I'm going to click on the picker over here, which is labeled white balance. Next, I'm going to look for a white part within the frame on my preview. I'm going to use the picker to select the whitest part of the image, and Davinci Resolve is essentially going to try and figure out what the correct white balance is. So for me, the whitest part of the image is this cloud over here. And boom, as I do that, my temperature and tint sliders have been adjusted automatically according to what Davinci Resolve believes will be the correct white balance. It's done a pretty good job, but I still feel like there's a little bit too much green in my monitor. So I'm going to come over here to the tint slider. and I'm going to push it towards the right hand side, essentially pushing more magenta into the image. Perfect. Now that I'm happy with the exposure and the white balance, I'm going to do an extra step. And this extra step is going to essentially drive our viewer's eye in towards our subject matter. And in our case, it's the model. So what I'm going to do is add a new node by holding down Alt or Option on a Mac, hitting S. Then I'm going to right click on the node, go to node label and label it window. Then come down to the window tab and add a circle. Then I'm going to take the circle and place it over the model's face, give it a slight feathering out by dragging from here to here. Next, I'm going to invert the mask. Now, when I invert the mask, it's essentially telling Davinci Resolve to affect all of the areas outside of the circle or the window. Then I'm going to come down here into the curves tab, and I'm going to pull down on this area on the left-hand side of the curve, which will affect the darker parts of the image. Look at the difference. To take it a step further, what I'm going to do is make sure this mask moves as the shot moves along. And how I'm going to do that is by coming down here into the tracker tab and clicking the track forward and reverse button. And I'm going to play through here just to check, and we have a perfect track, as you can see. Now that we have our viewer's attention going in towards the model, we got to make sure that the skin tones are looking correct. And there's a very easy way to do it. What you got to do, add a new node. Option or Alt S to add another node. Then I'm just going to right click on this node and I'm going to label it skin. Then I'm going to come down here to the qualifier tab and select the picker. Then I'm going to hit the highlight tool at the top left hand corner of Davinci Resolve just above the preview window. When you hit this highlighted tool, it's going to show you all the parts of the image you are selecting with the picker. So then all you have to do is come down here to the skin, hold down your left button on your mouse and drag slowly over the skin. Davinci Resolve has done a really good job at selecting the skin tones. However, when I look at the preview window, I can see that it selected a few areas it shouldn't have selected, like the greenery of the trees and the grass. So let's fix it. First off, under the qualifier tab, I'm going to come down to hue or color, and I want to deselect the green parts of the image. And I'm going to do this by dragging on this point here towards the left hand side to essentially pull the qualification out or away from the green. And there we go. All of the green from the leaves and the grass has now been removed. Next, I'm going to come here into saturation, and I'm going to soften up the selection of the most desaturated parts of the image by coming here into L soft and dragging this toggle wheel very gently towards the right hand side. There we go. This has cleared it up very nicely. Next, I want to smooth out this qualification even more. There's nothing worse than having a blotchy, pixelated qualification. And the way we do this is by coming down here into matte finesse and adjusting the denoise slider by dragging it to the right. Then I'm going to come into the blur radius, and I'm also going to drag that into the right. That smoothed it up really nicely. Then lastly, I'm going to come down here into clean black, and I'm also going to drag this towards the right. Clean black is going to enhance those deselected areas. Okay, so I'm very happy with the selection. Now that we've selected the skin tones, we can make changes to the skin tones independently from everything else within our frame. And I'm going to do this by coming down here to our scope section, clicking on this arrow and scrolling down to vector scope. Next, I'm going to click on these three sliders and make sure that the skin tone indicator line is on. Let's just toggle the highlight tool back on so we can see where only the skin tones are lying on the vector scope. We want these skin tones, which are represented here, to be lying on the skin tone indicator line exactly. You must remember, the vector scope is a direct translation of what you see in the color wheel. So if we look at these skin tones, we can see that they are shifted towards yellow or green. So how are we going to counteract this? Well, we do this by adding in the opposite color. And the opposite color to yellowy green is magenta. We're going to do this by coming into the color wheels tab and going straight to the gamma or midtones, because that's where skin tones live. Next, we are going to click and hold on the little circle in the middle of the color wheel and start dragging it towards magenta. Notice how that when you do this, the skin tones on the vector scope are reflecting the changes that we are making to the hue in the gamma color wheel. Perfect. Now let's see what this looks like before and after. Great. I'm really happy with all these changes that we've made. Now for the creative part. I'm going to right click on this node that we made right at the beginning of this color grade, and I'm going to add node, add serial, and I'm going to right click again and select node label. Then I'm going to label it creative because this is where our creative look or creative LUT is going to be. Next, I'm going to right click on this node, scroll down to LUT and scroll down to the creative LUT, and I'm going to click on it. And there you go. That looks great. Looks really cool, but there's one additional step that needs to be made. You see, I want the skin tones to remain independent of that of the creative look. And I'm going to do this by right clicking the creative LUT, scrolling down to add node, and then clicking on add layer. Next, I'm going to take this blue square and drag it to the blue triangle of this node underneath the creative LUT. And as soon as I release, the skin tones are now independent of that of the creative LUT. Now I'm going to show you that this is in fact working, and I'm going to go to the creative node here and I'm going to be ridiculous and drag the overall hue all the way to blue. Do you see how the skin tones aren't affected? Okay, let's just reset that. Alright, so there it is, our stylized music video look. If you want to get the LUTs that I used in this tutorial video absolutely for free, all you've got to do is click in the link in the description of this video. Until next time, cheers.